So we've got our quiz here. So everybody got it loaded up? Everybody good? Okay. Okay, well, please load it up. And it will be one at a time, and it'll be one question at a time. The questions will be displayed one at a time. So you have to answer each question before you can go on to the next question. So multi-dimensional quiz, password is 999. All right. So our first question is, which of the following declares a 2D array of doubles with 5 rows and 3 columns? Now I put this on because this, or something similar to it, although without the multiple choice portion of it, was an actual. It was an actual. It was an actual change we've made. This is an actual question that we've asked on the final exam before. Okay. Speaking of exams, by the way, when is your next exam? So on the schedule, I have July 10th as our next exam date. So we'll basically be that, and then another week of classes, and then we're done. So we're going to pretty much have, I think, up to like maybe Tuesday's worth of content, okay, for the second exam. Basically, arrays, one question or two on multi-dimensional arrays, and then on continuing on to us with maybe some basic problems like the one you just got for homework for classes. All right. So which of the following declares a 2D array of doubles with 5 rows and 3 columns? All right. So let's look at this. So now you've got double brackets bracket R, new double array 5, 3. So that does look like our correct answer with 5 rows and 3 columns. But let's look at the other answers. Okay. 5 rows and 3 columns. Double array R is equal to a new double 5, 3. Okay. So 5, 3, this isn't the notation we need to use for declaring a multidimensional array. And not only that, it only would be a 1D array. Double D is equal to open bracket, 0, 0, 0 for row in range 0 through 5. That's actually a list comprehension from Python. That's not going to work here because this is Java. Okay. Double double bracket array is equal to new double 3 and 5, which is similar to this one. Nothing immediately wrong. The only thing that these two answers have between them is 5 or 3 and 3 and 5. So double 3, 5 array is equal to new double 3, 5 array, and this one has numbers over here. But when we're creating arrays, numbers shouldn't go over here, right? So it's down between these two. These two, right? If we're creating a 2D array, it needs 2 dimensions, right? But it's important. So what's the difference between a row and column? Well, every time we've done rows and columns, the row has come first, right? So it is the first one. I hope. The very first one. Okay. Second question. So it's different for each one. That is true. I do scramble the answers because when I make the quiz, so you probably have your answers probably appeared in a different order, right? Yep, your answers appear in a different order. This is because when I make my make my quizzes, generally it says here, put the correct answer in first, then put the other answers in, and then I select an option to just shuffle the answers because that makes sense for me. So write a method using the drop-down menu to put the lines in the correct order. This is a Parsons puzzle, and I like these because these are easy for us to do here. So we want to create the method called block. We'll take in a 2D array of integers and return the sum of all the numbers in the array. Use the comments to match the curly braces. So we're writing a method over 9 lines. So if we're going to be writing a method, let's look at what should go here. All right. So public static so obviously the first line of writing a method should be the public static int method name and then the parameter takes in, right? And if that's the first thing, then the last thing we know needs to be the closing curly brace for the method. And I say, and it looks in the comments, we have 3 closing curly braces, one for ending the method, one for ending an inner for loop, one for ending an outer for loop. So we'll put the one that puts the end of the method over here. Make sense? Right? Just like writing actual code. So we want to write so the other thing to do, now let's actually think about the problem. It's got to take an array of ints. It's got to return the sum of all the numbers in the array. So the problem solving set for that is we need to do what? We need to create a variable to hold the sum, and at the end we're going to return that sum. So then what are we going to do? Well, we'll need to go through all the rows in the array, in this double array, right? All the rows in the matrix. So we look at every row, and then we look at each item in that particular row. So first thing we need to do is go through all the rows. Well, let's see. Create a sum. There we go. So we'll create a sum, and then what will we do? We'll go through all the rows. So for int row is equal to 0. Row is less than array.length row plus plus. Then what do we need to do? Well, then we need to go through also all the columns. Ooh, I made an error in this one. Didn't type it up right. So how did that happen? Sum plus equals row. I somehow made an error while I was doing this. How embarrassing. That should say, rather than sum plus equal row, that should be sum plus equal what, people? What should that be there if I want to grab the what should be there instead if I want to total up all the numbers?
R row column.
R row column instead of row, because row is the index, right? R row column gets the item at the row coordinate and this particular column coordinate. Okay, so that should end the inner. That should end the inner for. Then we end the outer for, and then we return our sum.
Wait, end inner.
Right, you end the inner, and then you have to.
Yeah, got it.
All right. So now the last question is actually a lesson for us. 2D arrays, I've been treating them like matrices, but I've been avoiding saying just straight out they're matrices because they aren't necessarily. The big thing about a matrix is that they have the same rows and same numbers in each column, right? You always see it. There's always matrices that look like this. The matrices look like this: 7, 2, 4, 1, 1, 1, 9. 3, 6, right? But there's nothing that stops me from, and you never ever see a matrix that looks like this. But in Java, that's perfectly fine. You can have and in Python, and in fact in any programming, because remember, we're looking at arrays of arrays, because what it really is an array of arrays rather than a two-dimensional matrix. Make sense? What that means is that we have it's essentially that we can create what's called a jagged array, where now these are rare, but they do exist, but it's where every row has a different number of elements in it. So, for instance, this example I have down there is 1, 2, right? We have it's 1, 2, 1. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So row 0 has 2 elements in it. Row 1 has 1 element. Row 2 has 5 elements in it, right? So let's write a method that returns the longest row in a jagged array. This has been a problem I've given on exams, specifically exam 2. So that's kind of a not so small hint that maybe this is something to know. So let's write a method that returns the longest row in the jagged array. So for our above example, it would be 2. So let's use the comments to match the curly braces. Okay? So the first thing we want to do, right, is choose the selection that gives us the method, right? Public static int array longests. So this one is going to return the actual array, not how long it is. It's turning the actual array of the longest one, right? And you've got 10 lines of code here as opposed to 9. So that means if this is the method, beginning of the method, then the last one, we kind of, right. So we put the end method over here. Okay? Next, let's look at what we've got. Well, obviously we need to iterate through, but we seem to have, well, let's count to make sure we didn't put any distractors in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's no distractors in there, so every one of these will get used. Right? Sometimes I put extra lines in there that aren't actually real. So let's look at this. So we've got int the row, int array longest row. So we've got 2 variable declarations. We've got an if statement in here, right? Here's the if statement and a matching thing. We've got the longest row equal to the row. We'll want to return the longest row. That seems like something we'll want to do at the end. That seems like our answer, right? We want to do that at the end, return longest row. So over here, what are we going to do? So, you know, you could do either of these in either order. So I should have probably said should have probably done them on one line or something. So let's go ahead and do int the row. So these variables, we typically want them to be outside of the for loop, right? If we care about the longest row, right? Actually, wait. Let's think about this.
Yeah, number 3 doesn't go outside.
What do we need? We need longest row, right? Because when we're comparing the rows, we got to start with something being the longest row. We got to declare one variable be the longest row. So we're going to assume that the first index 0 is the longest row until we're proven wrong. Okay? Then we're going to iterate through all the other rows. It looks like this one. Let's see what. Oh, there's only one for loop in here. So for index equals 0, right? Because it's an array of arrays, right? So we're going to be looking at each array, looking at the length, comparing it to the shortest. If the row we found was bigger than the longest row so far, then that's the new longest row. Okay. So let's do that. For int I is equal to 0, array I is less than array.length, I++. Right? We're going to iterate through all those, and then we're going to say, aha, array I is the row. Makes sense? We're going to iterate through all these. We're going to use this for loop. We're going to iterate through it, and we're going to grab the row. Right? So we're going to go through this for loop. The first iteration, we're going to have 1, 2. The second iteration, we're going to have 1. The third iteration, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then, it looks like that's all we need to do our if. If this row is bigger than the longest row, then the longest row is equal to that row. End the if. Okay? And then we have only one line left, and the for loop. And that should be it. That's a common problem we end up doing in our on the exam. Now I will give you a practice exam. Again, we are going to go over pretty much just. Oops, this got caught in my chair. How did that happen? Oh, I think I caught between my chair and the floor. Particularly, whatever. All right. So now let's go ahead and talk about. So that's the quiz. I'm going to divide this up into smaller videos.